And so when you go into creativity, I think that's a huge part of it. If there's anything I'm taking away from it, it's that I have permission to fail at this. And if I give myself permission to fail and not be perfect at it, the odds of me succeeding at it are actually so much higher.
Oh, yeah. Health seekers, welcome to the Master Your Thoughts podcast. I'm Judy Kobsar, and today's episode is on the creative mess. And I have a very special guest with me, Holli Pineda. We're going to be learning more about her and hearing from her.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited.
I know, absolutely. So you guys are going to kind of get a sneak peek into a conversation, and we're going to actually kind of pull the curtain back a little bit on what we do here at Wellness Method and how it relates to mastering your thoughts.
Exactly.
So Holli is a certified holistic health coach. She has been at Wellness Method for how long? I should know this.
Almost 3 years.
Oh my goodness. Almost 3 years.
Yeah.
She is our communications and marketing coordinator. And she and her sister, Sydney, are going to be launching their very own social media marketing company.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome, Holli.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me. It's so interesting to be on this side because usually I'm the one on the opposite side making sure stuff is happening. So this is fun.
You don't know this, but like Holli sets everything up. If you've seen my past podcast, it's only because she told me what to do and how to do it and plugged everything in.
Yep.
Yeah, so good. Okay, we're going to launch right into it. So if you listened to last week's podcast, we talked about messes.
Yep.
And then Holli and I got to talking, and we have so many conversations here at Wellness Method, and we just thought it would be great to bring her in and for you guys to learn from somebody else what this kind of creative mess is all about. So just let's start with, how did you come to Wellness Method so they can get to know you?
Yeah, totally. So I never applied for this job. That's one of the funniest things about this whole experience was I was looking for other jobs. I was actually supposed to be hired on at Lululemon. But in a strange turn of events, I got an email from our clinic director saying, hey, we saw your application. I'm like, for what? Wellness Method? What? Where is this? I've never even driven out to Danville,
This is a supernatural experience, literally.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. So I was like, but I got another job. It's fine. And then they told me that my job was going to be delayed, and getting hired on with Lululemon. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just go to the interview. Like by now I feel like I've just done so many interviews, might as well just, get the experience. So I came and I had the interview with Judy. I think it was you and Jessica.
We were.
Yeah.
We were. She was in a tiny office and we were both firing questions at her.
Yep. And so I was like, okay. And I literally walked out of that job or the job interview, and I said I didn't want the job.
We didn't know that. We had no idea. We were like, she was awesome. That was a great interview.
Yep. But I was like, nope, I'm good. I'll stick with the other. They'll hire me on in 3 weeks, And so, but it actually didn't end up working out there. And then 3 weeks later, they asked me to come back for a second interview. And I said, well, I don't have a job at this point, so I better go. And so I came and I interviewed again. And it was, just kind of this really organic thing that happened. And so ended up getting the job.
All right. Well, that kind of tells you how Holli came to us. So next question I have for you is, because you came from working in a completely different kind of background to wellness. Mm-hmm. And though you had done your health coaching certification, having actually applied, it was something that you never did. So what was it like coming in and working at a wellness clinic like this?
It was totally different than what I was expecting. I kind of just thought I'd be doing the charts and practical things like that, but it ended up turning into us having all of these side conversations. And I had never met anybody, of course, like you, Judy, but also Doctor. He would just come over and he would just have a conversation with you. And I thought, I'm just your office assistant. Like, why are you asking me these things? Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have a valid point to make here, but just that kind of atmosphere right off the bat was really warm and inviting to new ideas. And I didn't offer any new ideas for a while.
No, you didn't.
I just kind of observed and I was like, okay.
I remember that. Like, I actually remember one time the doc coming up and asking you something, your opinion. Mm-hmm. And I witnessed your reaction. You were surprised, number one, that he would ask. And then number two, you kind of like downplayed your intelligence and your opinion. And at that point, I actually didn't know that she just had an explosion of ideas and opinions in her head because she was holding back. Like, honestly, I think for about the first year.
Totally.
It felt like,
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
then that kind of atmosphere is very different than something that you were in. And then the fact that, you know, you thought you were just going to be doing charts and stuff, but then you kind of started to get involved with our wellness partners. Cause as you guys know, we don't call you patient when you work with us. We call you wellness partner. That must've been kind of different for you. What was that like?
Oh, totally. I went from working with kids. So literally I was working with the oldest being elementary, and I did work with, you know, adults as well, but primarily my focus was on kids, to then working with people who were more in their like mid 50s, like that was
grown children.
Yeah,
we're actually grown children.
You know what? I learned that. But it was really crazy to be able to be in that and just to have like a mindset shift to that and being able to realize that not only was I learning so much, I mean, I learned a lot in my health coaching certification, but as soon as I got here, everything started to connect a lot more because you're actually tangibly doing it. It's different when you're reading information than actually applying information. And so as soon as I got into that and realizing, okay, what is health coaching, talking to people, how people talk about their health, how they engage in that conversation, how to learn how to, you know, just like you would show compassion to a kid who, you know, scraped his knee, you know, it's like, okay, so now I'm talking to somebody who, you know, has struggled with their weight their entire life. So how do I extend that in a different way? So yeah, it was a whole different ball game for me, but it was really, really good. And one of the great benefits of being here, but also is like, you just get pushed into it and you're like, here you go, you're going to do this. Like, okay, you're good. Like we tried it one time, you're good.
On the job training. Let me
try to make this work then, you know, but that's really good. That's really good for a person like me. So
yeah. Well, we've always kind of had that approach. It's like, okay, there's systems and there's training and there's a manual, but honestly, like just get your hands in and get dirty. And then here's the manual to check and see. And then as you go, create new systems, because we're always trying to, you know, improve. And we feel like, I mean, like with you and like with Sharika, who's come in and, you know, Jessica's been here for a while now, but we need fresh ideas, you know? Okay. So then I know that one thing might've been kind of a surprise to you. And, you know, we started having our team trainings because every Monday we meet and we do a team training, and we call it team trainings because we do more than just meet. So we do like some mindset stuff and we did a book club and all of that, but you were still kind of green. And again, you weren't really talking, but we were doing like some mindset stuff in our team trainings and also in our conversations throughout the day. Like we blah, blah, blah all day long.
Totally.
Except again, took her about a year to blah, blah, blah. Then once this is like, it's like, you know, when you have a kid, you're like, once they start talking, you can't shut them up. But we didn't want Holly to shut up because she just had so much great information. What was it like for you for like mindset stuff?
I was like, I don't know what this is. Where does this come from? And the first time I think I heard you talk about, I think it was limiting beliefs. So I was trying to figure it out. Yeah, one of her favorite topics. And we were talking about it and you were relating it to, you know, just different life experiences. And one of the things that I had appreciated about you and something I hadn't seen was that you just talk about everything. Like your story is a part of everybody's story. And I had never seen anybody connect with that. And I joked around with her yesterday when we were talking about this. I said, the first time we used to do dinner seminars, I heard her share her story. And I just remember thinking, she's sharing her story in a group of strangers. Who does that? I would never do that. And so, but that act of vulnerability with people that you didn't know, and then with people that you did know, your team, was that, wow, there's like a comfortability here, you know, that we're starting to experience. But also, okay, so what is a limiting belief? Do I have limiting beliefs? Like I'm questioning now my belief system, but I'm learning how to do that in a way that's actually helpful, instead of in a way that's very judgmental towards myself, but in a way that actually lifts the burden off of myself. And so, but in the beginning, I was like, I have no idea what she's talking about. I'm just really confused. I'm intrigued, but I'm also confused and I don't know what to think about it. Like, what does this voodoo? You know?
Like it was totally different language for you.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what? Like I believe in X, Y, and Z. How is that is that limiting? Am I limiting?
Yeah, exactly. Am I limiting are my beliefs actually limiting my life, when I thought beliefs are supposed to inform your life, which they are, but to actually question them was something that I hadn't done.
Yeah.
So,
and it's cool because what we find is that everyone has limiting beliefs, no matter how evolved you are. Like mentors and gurus that I look up to and that are influencers in the thought, space, thought leaders, they have limiting beliefs. They're just different. Yeah. And I mean, and that's like literally, like I said, it's my favorite topic, beliefs, limiting beliefs, that kind of thing. Hence Master Your Thoughts podcast. Yeah. Which again, honestly, is really a product of Holli and her sister Sydney. Like, you guys need to be doing a podcast. Yeah. And doctors need to be on this, and yours needs to be on this. And I just have to say that I've prayed for, someone to come into my life and just produce me. Because I mean, Holli loves the back end. Like you love the back end stuff, but I love her being on the front end like this right now. Thanks. Yeah. Because you just are, you're wiser than I think you know. And so I'm super happy to be able to feature that right now. Okay. So when you were talking, it brought me to think of when we first started having you do coaching calls. Yes. So in Wellness Method, we do a lot of coaching, and we coach our people by phone and in person. And Holli was doing this particular coaching call in the anti-inflammation phase. And I actually encouraged her to start, and she was following the script, which we always start with that, but I encouraged you to share your story a little bit. I think it was journaling. You were talking to me about journaling. And I was like, it's okay to be vulnerable. And I think you had been here maybe almost a year, maybe not quite a year, but what was it like to embrace that and go, okay, I'm going to start talking about myself and be vulnerable and share my story a little bit? Yeah. At first I was like, no, scary. I don't want to do that. There was just like a hard no, and then I was thinking about it. But really for me, it was the fact of seeing you do it. And I would watch Judy do one of our really core mindset coaching calls. So I would see that, and I would see how she would connect with people. So I was like, okay, well, I got to figure out how to do that, but I want to figure out how to do that authentically to me. Yes. And then when she told me, okay, so bring up the topic of journaling. Journaling is something that I have loved doing for a while. I was like, I don't really know how that connects with people, but sure. So the first time, because when we looked at how fast my coaching calls were, they were literally like 3 to 5 minutes. And we allotted a half hour. And so you're like, she's in and out. Yeah, I'm like, okay, you live? You still following the plan? Great. We'll follow up with you next week. Bye-bye. And so I knew that something needed to, shift. It needed to be worth the time of doing it, my time and their time, of course, and the investment of it. And so I started doing that. And I remember the first time I had a coaching call that was 12 minutes, which for me was that's a big leaps deal. And bounds longer. And I had a great conversation with somebody about the topic of journaling. And it just started to, as I kind of got into that lane and realized that I had to connect with something that meant something to me, and talking with people, even if they had never journaled and it wasn't a part of something they enjoyed, they were thinking about it for the first time, that it could be something that could help them as they were in this process. So it was great. And then I remember having one coaching call that was literally 25 minutes. And I thought to myself, if you would have told me 3 months ago, 6 months ago, that my coaching call would be 25 minutes, I would have been like, how? It's true. And so, but it was great. It was really growing for me to learning to ask the right questions, letting them talk. When was my space to talk, and to be able to speak into their life, and then to learn. And you learn, as people are talking to you as well. I think that's the process. Like, even though you're trying to implement something for them, it reminded me of working with kids. Like, you are learning just as much as they are in the process. And so I think that's a great thing about coaching. And, I mean, a lot of coaching is about the listening. Yeah. And we have a hard time listening. I mean, even if, like someone like you who didn't like to talk too much and, enter into deeper conversations at first, the listening is where you get more of the information, and then you actually know how to help them. And that's actually like, I've had training like that in marketing and sales. It really is like, when you listen, that's where you can go solve people's problems. Exactly. Because they'll lay them out for you. They'll just lay it that's right the shocking thing. I think if there was anything there's a lot of things that surprised me working here, but I was shocked at how open people are. Yes. And they're craving it. They totally are. And once I realized that they just needed somebody to hear them and validate them, like, people will share things with you that you're just shocked by. But it's kind of, when a friend
comes to you with something that's burdening them.
Yeah.
And when they entrust you with that, like you just love them more for it. You want to help them more. You want to be more nurturing towards them. So I think it's the same with coaching. When people start to open up, you feel that same, like, wow, they trust me with this. So
it's
now
right?
it totally is. And so then now you can move from point A to point B with them and be like, man, I really want you to be successful in this, because now there's some relationship here and there's some trust built here too. So
yeah. And you grow so much, and you understand, like, you know, the craving part. I mean, especially in the last year and a half, but even before COVID, you know, people are just craving real relationships, real conversation, conversation that really the outcome is just for their bettering of their life and their health and their heart. And so that's why I just think what we do here is so special. And luckily, special people are attracted to come and help us with this venture. So there's a memory that I have of you. And this kind of goes back to the mess theme. And it was when we were in the coaching office and you were sitting on the couch and we were actually having a personal conversation, which we often do here.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, man, we're not getting a lot done, but we're actually getting a lot done because this is part of life and work. And you were working through something in your life. And I started to talk to you about the mess. And now, I don't know if you guys can tell, but Holli is very well put together. She always comes very well put together. The way she does things is very well put together. And we're going to get into more of a creative mess conversation. But so I think this idea of that you got to go into the mess to clean it up was new to you, because we were talking about a struggle and past stuff, and it was in relation to this stuff, which that's how it is in life. Like, you guys know that if you've listened to this podcast, you know that. If you haven't, then go back and listen to other episodes. It's all connected.
Totally.
So we were having this conversation. I just told her, I'm like, Holli, you got to sit in the mess. You got to get in the muck. And for me to tell this beautiful girl, this beautiful shining soul, to go sit in her muck was a little unnerving for me and you. But I could see your mind kind of figuring out, like, well, what does that look like sitting? I go, you got to get messy and dirty so you can get new eyes on it and see it and come out. So what was it like for you to have it be presented to you in that way? Because you may have understood it, but it had been told to you in a different way.
Yeah, I think for me, I'm very much a compartmentalizer of my life, and I'm very used to handling different, whether it be personal things or work things. I just am like, okay, I'm either going to handle this alone and compartmentalize it and think about it later, and then I'll work through it like incrementally like this. But the thought of actually sitting with all of it was something that I was like, no, it's too much. It's overwhelming. I'm not very comfortable with very big emotions or anything like that. It's just not me. And so, or me in a place of feeling like myself. And so when she said that, I understood that that's definitely something that I needed to do to get to the place that I wanted to be, or the person that I wanted to be. But hearing it for the first time in that way was, to sit in the mess, but I don't like being messy. Like she's saying, I like to be put together. And that was something that that I had enjoyed for a while. And because I had dealt with other things, I had struggled with anxiety before, being younger, even some depression and things like that. So for me, the exterior was definitely my way of saying I'm put together, even if I don't feel put together on the inside. And so to be able to come to that place of being, but I actually want to have that kind of authenticity that I'm seeing in you guys, who are able to talk about your journey and your messes from a place that is more authentic. And so, but I can only get there, like you're saying, if I actually sit in it and allow it to kind of do the process of it. So,
and it takes practice.
Yeah.
Just like anything,
Definitely.
like that's something that we just see over and over, is everything takes practice. Like they have to prep their food over and over so that they can understand it, right? Well, we have to sit in the mess over and over so that we can understand, like, where did it come from and how do I fix this and clean it up? Because I love the analogy of, when we're little, we have mess all over our face. And if we never wash our face and clean it up, it's going to grow bugs and get gross and grow hair. That happens in our life. Okay. So, this podcast is called Mastering Your Thoughts, right? And I also remember another instance where you texted me to ask me a question about a meeting that you were going to have. And it's so cool to watch the evolutionary process of somebody that you love and care about. And this was actually the first time you reached out to me and asked me a question, because again, she wants to be able to, you want to be able to figure stuff out on your own. And I was the same way. Like if it wasn't my idea, then I sucked, right? Like it had to come from me. I didn't want to ask for help. And if somebody brought a good suggestion or something and it wasn't my idea, I would do it because I could see it was good, but I sucked because why didn't I come up with it? Exactly. So this was a big deal. This is the first time you texted me, you asked me a question. This is something going on in her personal life. And so I think I called you and we had a conversation, and as always, like, I'm a mom. So I do want to save the people I love, but I also wanted to give you ideas and suggestions, and then you just run with it, which you did. And the suggestion was more like, you know what, you actually get to control the interaction, not the other person, because this was a meeting that you were going to have. And I think that's a shift that people need to make in their life, with their health, with their thoughts, all of that. But I think that was a pivotal moment for you, because you were like, oh yeah, darn right I can. Like, just because this person wants to meet, it can be on my terms. It can be where I want, it can be how long I want. I can lead the conversation, right? And that was powerful for you.
Oh, totally. Because I think before I'd always been like, oh man, I have to do the right thing. And so the right thing always feels like accommodating others at the expense of yourself. And so
how many of you have done that?
Yeah, totally. And so that's why I actually, I texted Judy right away. I was like, I need advice on this, because I feel like I'm going to do what I think is the right thing, but not the right thing for me. And so I needed the permission that, like, Holly, you can actually do what's the right thing for you. And that is the right thing, be able to embrace that and accept that. And so, yeah, it ended up being totally different than I thought. And I really needed somebody to like affirm that in me and just say, it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
You have permission to do that, And so, and I've noticed that because of that conversation, now when people will bring things to me, whether it be conversations with friends or whatever, I always think about that process of like, not only does this honor the situation, but does this honor myself in this, And so often, I think we get into trying to do the right thing, but at the cost of ourselves.
Right.
And that really isn't the right thing, because it's not the healthiest thing for us, in any area of life, whether it be emotional, mental, physical, spiritual. So,
right. And it's not only not healthy for you, but it ends up not being healthy for the person that you're in interaction with. And it's crazy how it works like that.
Totally.
Right. Like it's almost like the hardest thing is the better thing. And it's not, but it is the right thing, but it's not the right thing that maybe we were taught in society. I just love it. Okay. So, I see how that has translated in your life with us, at work, in your personal life. How have you seen it be a difference in like your interactions with your friends, your interactions with your family, your interactions with, maybe an acquaintance or somebody that like, do you see it weaving through your life?
Yeah, I definitely do. I think it's that I had to learn that compassion towards myself in that process of whether it be getting into the mess, welcoming that space. So now when I talk to people who are in that as well, the first thing I always say is like, man, that's really hard. Like, let me validate you here, because it is really hard, and then instead of saying you should do something, it's just getting them to guide them to that point where they realize the right decision for themselves. And so I think altogether, it's the more I realize compassion towards myself and can have that in Elaine's as a recovering perfectionist, and that's hard.
Get that recovering
really
perfectionist.
Hard. I don't like to label myself as a perfectionist. I'll just say I'm like a recovering at that.
Because there is no perfect.
There is no perfect. It doesn't exist. I have to remind myself of that all the time. But it's allowed me to be able to be in more messes and actually have more peace about it. Like it doesn't necessarily feel like the worst thing anymore. It just feels a part of the process. And I think that is the process of living, that is the creative process. It is just that, it's not clean, it's not tidy, and it's not meant to be, and so when you look at that whole dynamic of it, it really is just creating the right kinds of ripples that you need. It's not just the straight path, it's like the hills and crazy, and then here's a detour over here, and so you just learn to pack the right things this time. So,
and if you forgot something, then you go to somebody who has it, you pick it up, you learn it, right? And then you trudge on.
Exactly.
So that brings us to the creative process, because this was something that I talked about last week, the creative mess. And because we are a entrepreneurial business, we're not part of corporate, we're not a franchise, we're forging the way. There's a lot of creation going on here. Probably more than you imagined, right?
Yes.
So talk about that for you. What's it been like?
Yeah, for me, it's been that conversation that we were talking about really gave me permission to realize that I hadn't been creative in a really long time. And when we were going into, 2020 and everything that happened with it, I realized that I was going to need some of that creativity and some of that ingenuity. And I used to define myself as a creative person. And then I felt like that was something that was actually criticized and kind of a downfall in the past, position I was in. And so I just put it away. I was like, okay, I'm not going to be that anymore. I'm going to be all lists, all procedures, all those things, which is a part of me as well. I'm just learning the balance of both now.
Thank goodness
but
we
realizing
need that.
Like how much I needed the actual creative process, and that creative process was coming out of the messy situations. And that it really is such a great gift to be in that, and being here where really rarely I'm told no to my ideas, which is sometimes I think, okay, we have to pull it down, restrain a little bit.
Sometimes we say not now.
Yes,
not yet.
Not yet. But I rarely get
Write
told
that
no.
down, Holli.
Exactly. If I really get told no, and I think that and permission to fail, I think that's really a part of the creative process.
Yes.
And this has been such a great atmosphere here at our clinic that you and Dr. Kobsar have created, in that we really have permission to go forward in things. And if we fail, well, we just find a new way of doing it. And then we know that there's a route to success. We just haven't found it yet.
Exactly.
Even doing this podcast, we talked about this a year and a half, 2 years ago. I don't even know when we talked about this. And now we're doing it.
A year and a half ago.
Yeah. And we're doing it now. And so we started planting seeds, and towards doing that. And so when you go into creativity, I think that's a huge part of it. If there's anything I'm taking away from it, it's that I have permission to fail at this. And if I give myself permission to fail and not be perfect at it, the odds of me succeeding at it are actually so much higher.
Oh yeah.
And so
you have freedom.
Exactly. And that really is a part of that whole process, to really being able to do tangible things like this. Because if I walked into thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to figure out how to do the lighting, I'm going to figure out the mics, I'm going to figure out all these things, then I started to feel overwhelmed because I wanted to be perfect the first time off. But instead it was, we're going to figure this out incrementally. We're going to figure out this step first. And there were all these little steps that we had to figure out before we got here.
That's right.
This is just one of the creative
And we're not even done.
No, exactly.
With this.
And we're always improving it. And so I think that has been great. You have people come along, like Marcus coming along and helping us with things. So I wasn't going to have to figure it out alone.
Right.
And so it didn't have to just be, my idea. We will continuously change things. And that's a great thing. And so I think if in any process, especially when it comes to creativity, the permission to fail really opens up the avenue for you to be successful at anything. So.
Also, we're unoffendable around here. And I think we say that to our team, just bring it. If you don't like my idea, I'm unoffendable. You need to be unoffendable, because otherwise we're going to get stuck in our emotions and be like, oh yeah, they didn't like my idea.
And it's not a personal thing. And I think sometimes when you're a creative, you take everything so personally. You're like, oh my gosh, my heart is so fragile. That was attached to me. But realizing that no, this idea, I'm just going to throw it out there.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work out, great. But maybe 6 months from now, we'll actually revisit that idea and we'll be able to accomplish it because we have the tools we need to do it. So
it's really funny when we're in the team trainings, because there's three of us. Well, there's four of us in the team training, three. I'm not leading it. I mean, I have the agenda, but literally the team leads it. Everybody's process is so different. And watching this over the last 3 years for me has just been so enjoyable, because I know Holli's process. I know Sharika's process. I know Jessica's process, and watching their processes develop and watching each of you get confidence around your process. Like there's sometimes, so Holli, usually you start your idea with what if.
Yeah.
She's like, what if we, right?
Yeah.
What if, because, and she just goes, you just roll.
Mhm.
Right. And then we shut you down sometimes. We're like, no,
Totally.
that's not going to work. And
Yeah.
she's like, okay, moving on.
Mhm.
Right. Sharika sits there and she like, I can see her thinking and her brow kind of furrows. Have you seen that?
Totally.
She's quiet, right?
Yes.
But her head is loud.
Yeah.
She's like this while Holli's going. And then Jessica is looking at her phone because she's already envisioning the spreadsheet and the procedures that we're going to make.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that in them?
Totally. So, and Judy's like, just there, like, okay,
facilitating
engaging everybody at that time. So
I love
totally
that.
True. Yeah.
I love that. And that's another thing that we talked about is how much we love this creative process because everyone handles it differently. It's very messy. Sometimes it gets inspired from an idea. Sometimes we get inspired from seeing something, a desire, like, I want to have that too, you know, like the podcast. But talk a little bit about the feelings that we were experiencing when we got the news that shut down, lockdown in your house, you know, oh my gosh, we've always had a virtual offering. I mean, we've always been a virtual clinic. It's just not been pretty. It's been a little clunky.
Totally.
So we were squeezed.
Yes.
And I remember standing at the counter and Jessica, being really honest, was freaking out. Yeah. Everyone responded to it differently. Okay. We all did our different things. But what I noticed about you was we just kind of stood there and we're like, we just started brain dumping and got right on the spot. Like I remember President Trump being on the phone and he's like, I can't remember the name. What did they call it? Not shut down, lockdown, shelter in place. Yeah. Such a lame term, but very official. Yes. And we just started to figure it out. So I call you a figure outer. Yes. That's not a term, but you're a figure outer. Definitely. So do you remember that? Oh, I totally do. I remember we all just sat there. Yeah. And I can totally remember where we were standing. Yeah. And I just looked at you and I was like, Judy, can I still come into work? And you were like, yeah, I think so. I said, okay. And then we just started going. Yeah. It was just this whole thing is, you know, if I can still come into work, if we can still do this, like, let's just still do this. So I had that like little glimpse of fear for a second. Right. And as did I. Yeah. We all had that, you know, but then I was like, no, like we can do this. Yeah. You know, and there's something about, I love to figure we don't know how we're going to do it. Exactly. We don't know how, but we will. Like, that's the thing. And I think that's the great part of it when you can collaborate with people and just know, and you're all on the same page. Like, hey, we're all in unknowns here. We don't know what's happening tomorrow. We don't know. Like, I don't know if I can drive into work tomorrow, but I remember planning on writing you a letter. Like we wrote a letter saying you worked for an essential business, like in case you got, I was so worried about you getting pulled over. I just had it on there, but I will say this, cause I do commute. It was the best drives I've ever had for a year. I'm sorry that people couldn't go into work, but for me, I was like, I get to the office in 35 minutes. I'm not complaining. Awesome. But yeah, that was really one of the turning points for us. And we figured out so many things in a short amount of time, in such a short technology, so much technology. Yeah. And it was like figuring out how to do Zoom efficiently with all the rest of the world, you know, but figuring out all these different avenues of doing things. But what's so neat is to look back a year later and how much more efficient it's just made us. And to realize, like, I love that one of the questions we ask our wellness partners in the journal is actually like, where do you see yourself a year from now? And it's one of my favorite questions to pose to myself, like in my personal life, but also professional, like, where will we be a year from now? Like, we're doing this now. Right. So a year from now, what are we going to be doing? I don't know, but it makes me excited. Exactly. Because whether we're living in, you know, a pandemic or we're living, you know, on the other end of the beach, it doesn't matter. Like, there's always something to look forward to. And that curiosity, I think, really breeds that kind of creative, you know, juices getting them flowing. And it really flowed to our wellness partners. Like, didn't you feel that? I felt like they had faith that they weren't going to be left behind because we were on it. We were communicating with them. I remember saying, we're not quite sure how this is going to look, but this is what we're going to do. So we're good. We gathered them all together. Stay on track. Like, you guys are going to be fine. And I think because a lot of them were probably thinking, is my program paused? What am I going to do? Right. You know, all these things. And it's like, no, like, we're going to stay on track. Like, you're still going to have your coaching calls. You're still going to have your product. We'll ship it to you. Like, you know, all these things. And I think it really gave them that confidence in us that, you know, hey, and I think
think we all needed stability at that time. So to get to be a part of that, providing that to people, it gives you that confidence as a person and that purpose, because I think that's what was hard for a lot of people, is they were losing their purpose, you know, and things, because, you know, work does that, you know,
it's
even
your
though
identity
this is,
for many people.
Exactly. Even though this is our job, you find your purpose in your work, you know, too. So
I called it the squeeze. Like we were squeezed. And so that's an example of a mess that is put upon us and that we respond to. Now we have a lot of creative messes here that we enter into all on our own. We take the initiative and say, we are going to walk into this mess and we are literally going to create something from nothing.
Exactly.
We love that process too. Now, because we work with the doc, Dr. Bradley Kobsar, who is a scientific creative, and me being married to him for many, many years, I can tell you he's in constant creation mode, and it all centers around wanting to have a world-class program, which we do, that gets results. So one of the things that I remember about whenever anybody starts working here, and when you were working the front desk, the doc is always creating. And so he adds things to our program all the time. And whenever he adds something that requires us to create a form that maybe the wellness partners are going to fill out, I always say, and I remember saying this to you, Holly, only make 5 copies of it. Because if you make 30 or 50 copies, you're going to waste that paper, because he's going to change it next week. He's going to tweak it and you're going to have to tweak the form. Right.
I remember the first time he said that to me, I was like, okay, sure.
Like what?
You know, like, I was like, okay, you can't possibly change that much. Oh, I was wrong. You can. Oh, there's a new update of that. Oh, there's a new update of this. Oh, you added stuff to that. Okay, cool. So it's like always playing like, all right, what are we going to do? You know, what's going to happen? What's around the bend? And at first, for somebody who, you know, does have a tendency to want things like neat and tidy, it was like, you know, like you feel your body cringe. But then after that, I realized I'm like, man, this is actually really fun, because this job is never boring. You know, like we're always challenging. Growing. Yeah, exactly. There's always challenges. There's always things, but it's like my favorite thing when I just hear him like come out the door. I'm like, oh, he has an idea. I'm like, okay, guys, can we like meet for a second? Like he'll just like pull us all over. He's like, so I'm thinking of doing blah, blah, blah. And like, he gets all excited about it. It's just like this really fun thing. Like, and I think that really like bonds you as a team too.
Totally. Because we're actually in the throes of a new phase that the doc has put into some of our programs. Because not all our programs are different, because not all you guys are different, but we're in the throes of it right now. He's added this phase called Cellular Supercharge, which is part of the larger program, but also it can be its own little program. So we're in the throes of that right now. And he comes, like you said, he comes out of the office, he has this idea, and believe me, it's brewing at home, and I'm listening to it, and he's doing it and testing things as he always does. Well, when it comes to the full idea being presented to us, then it's our job to put the systems in place, to make it flow, to get things in order, to make sure the wellness partners, whatever. So what's that like for you? Because, you know, you kind of are multifaceted here. You're the marketing end, you're the back end. She's responsible for all this. But at the same time, Holly's always like, well, let's put a process in place. Like we were talking about doing something new on one of our Facebook groups. And I'm like, the team just needs to get in there and just start posting. And Holly's like, let's set up a schedule. Let's like make a plan. You know, whereas I'm like, let's just do it.
Yeah, totally. And so I think at first, initially, like I want to push back on it, because I like things the way that they are, because they're tidy, you know? And then I realized, and I think this is really good, whether you find yourself as the person with the idea and then the person who comes and helps get the idea accomplished. So for him, like our role here is to implement the new science that he's developing for things. So as soon as so even though initially I would be like, oh my gosh, this is going to be more work. I'm gonna have to make new templates. I'm gonna have to blah, blah, blah. Like that's like the first thing that's just like,
am I gonna fit it all in?
In my brain. But then I think, okay, so part of that is he has spent a ton of time on this already. So he's been on it. He's excited about it. There's so much work that's gone into it. So I can't just shoot it down, you know, like, and you don't want to do that. You know, there's a time when you say yes later, you know, like we mentioned earlier, but there's other things. And so for me, I'm like, okay, so how do I get this accomplished, and how do I get this accomplished efficiently? And that is probably one of my favorite roles to be in. Is I love working, and I feel like I've always been around creative people. And I've seen a lot of times creative people get their ideas just squashed so fast, and it's really disheartening. And so I think instead, I think, okay, so there is going to have to be a system, and there's probably going to be times we're going to have to come to him and say, I don't know if this is going to work. Like,
which we have been.
Which we have, and we do, we sometimes have to, but it's all in the thought of, we will get this implemented, and we're going to protect that idea.
Right.
And we're just going to build bridges around it to make it something that's feasible, that we can accomplish together, and that's going to sustain. So I think whatever end, if you find yourself with the idea, make sure you surround yourself with people who do know how to get stuff done, but also will kind of take the idea and just create the bridges it needs. And then if you do find yourself as the bridge maker, to not, be so opposed to all the ideas coming, and just to learn the balance of it, and letting ideas sit and breathe for a second, too. So I think it's a balance to be had with both, but both are just so equally like impactful to whatever your greater mission is, whether you're a clinic, whether you're a business, whatever it is. It's like you foster it, you let it grow, and then it starts to grow. And then all of a sudden you realize, it actually did come together, and it actually will come together differently than you thought it was.
Totally different.
And that's a part of the beauty of it, because you remember it in beta. And then now you're here, and you're like, this is great.
This is a different path.
Us, like 6 months from now, Cellular Supercharge will seem like a breeze.
Yeah, like no big deal.
Just like any other part of our program. Right now, we're having to figure out so many different aspects of it, but it's going to be great.
I think the cool thing too is that we can see, you said something about, your ideas with people who are going to protect it. Yeah. And that's something that is very important, because I know that our whole team, our hearts are always for what's going to help our wellness partners.
Exactly.
And because we all are already on that, we're all going to fight for the best route to get them what they need. And that's where his heart is. So if his heart continues to be born out of wanting that for them, which it always is, until the day that man dies, he's going to be creating, even though he's telling me right now, he's going to slow down.
It's never been true, because there's always going to be something new.
There is. And so I think that's an important point. Whatever you're working on in your life, make sure that you're sharing your ideas and new things with people who aren't going to shoot you down. Cause like you said, like that's really disheartening. And then you feel like, well, maybe that wasn't a good idea. And then you're not going to take the lid off your life, and that's going to become a limiting belief.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me, what is I don't know if I told you I was going to ask you this question. I like to throw things at people. What was one of your scariest, most challenging moments at Wellness Method? Not scary, scary, but oh my gosh, really? I have to do this, or?
Okay. So the first one, when I first started, was I don't enjoy public speaking. And I had to, when we were doing dinner seminars, I had to introduce Judy, which really isn't that hard. It's it
was all of
it's
30 seconds.
It's literally a script, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to people. This is freaking me out. So I had to practice a couple times, and I would, do it. So that was the first one that really scared me. The second one would probably be when we had to figure out everything about Zoom, because I just wanted it to run right. And that was again, having to release the control of it. So it's actually a mixed bag, but I'd say that was the scariest, doing our first live webinar and not knowing if it was going to fully work or not. Did we do everything right? Did we do everything we were supposed to do? All of that. And then it was funny, because then probably 4 months later, 5 months later, I said, Judy, I think we could do this without you having to be live. And there was a circumstance where we had to do it without you being live.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, let's figure it out. I was so scared, because I was like, if this doesn't work, this is all my idea. I said I would figure it out. I literally tested it 4 times just to make sure it worked, make sure I knew when to end it so it still looked live. And so, I probably had the most anxiety.
I remember that
worked, but I was like, we can do it. And I was like, but it's my idea. So if it doesn't work, it's on me.
And here's the deal. I wasn't feeling any of that. because I didn't know how she was going to do it. So that was all on her. And again, like if it didn't work, yeah, it was your idea, but okay, well, let's fix it. Let's like, okay, we'll just,
and I knew that that's
but
how she would
still.
react to it. But still, I was like, oh my gosh, we have paid marketing on this. Man, like I'm going through like the list of everything in my head. But I would say that was top moment.
Not that I don't expect excellence, because I do.
Totally.
But it does no good to just put the hammer down ahead of time. Like this better work, Holly, because we spent XYZ money.
Yeah.
But no, it's afterwards. Like what went well, what went wrong, what can we do better? What did we, I remember when we did do our first webinar live, when we finished it, we totally like danced it outside and like high-fived, and we're like, because there was so much nerves around it.
Yes. And even she was nervous, and that like tells you a lot, because you don't see Judy nervous a lot, especially when it comes to public speaking things. Like she can just go. And so I was like, oh my gosh, Judy's nervous. I'm nervous. Like she's like, I've never done this, but I'm like, I've never done this before either.
Well, literally having to speak into a green dot and look at a green dot. Like I'm used to talking in front of 30 to 50 people.
Exactly.
With like some feedback. You know?
And we never used Zoom before this. Like we never did for anything. Like
everything was live, like live and in person. I mean, our clinic didn't shut down. We were open because we're an essential business, and many people came in.
Totally.
And we're not in fear, because they know the power of the body. They know the power of the immune system, like all of that. I'm not going to get on a soapbox about that right now, because now we're in 2021. Okay. So what is your advice to people who are very intrigued and interested in this whole master your thoughts concept, this whole concept of the mess that we have to sit in and be like, what's your advice to them?
I would say everybody needs it. And I think that's the thing, whether you are a person who has a developed spiritual practice, or you feel like you have a strong mentality, but your mentality is more like pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality. Like, hey, that's great for having like a grit factor, but there are going to be areas in your life where you actually have to unwind things and go through the process of it. So I would say everybody needs it. You're going to find, aspects of it that speak to you, and other things that will maybe speak to you at a different season in your life. So I would say the first simple thing is, we talked about it a lot, limiting beliefs, like start to question that. And I think curiosity towards your own mindset, and to begin to question your own mindset and beliefs, is the first step. And so, I think that if you're already feeling like you're in that process, and you've been listening to, these podcasts, continue on, and then find books about it, find more research about it, because it's so fascinating. And it did take me time to actually become interested in it. And then once I was interested, I'm like, oh my gosh, now there's the science of it. There's the psychology of it. There's
the brain, the neurons.
And what's great about that too, because then you have like all this going on, and then all of a sudden you're starting to see it on your social feeds. You're starting to see things, and you're recognizing things faster. And it'll help you to build the kind of life that you want, and also to be the kind of person that you want to be. Going back to where, you see yourself a year from now. Well, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? What are the roles you want to play in your life? Whatever that looks like, you have to have that mentality built up in you, and it doesn't just happen. It's not just there.
Again, it's repetitions. You've got to practice it.
You've got to do those exercises that you think are dumb. And like, I'll tell you that, like, honestly, some exercises I was like, this is a waste of time, but I did it.
And I can see it in the team trainings when she's thinking that.
Or I'm like, no, hard pass on it. But it was funny. The other day I was doing a coaching call on one of our exercises that we have them do for mindset, the sparkle. I think you even mentioned it on one of these. And I was talking about it, and I just was like, what? I feel like I need to do that exercise again. Like, it's been a while for me. So I went back and I journaled it in, and I started to do that. Like, I even do simple things I'll write on my calendar, like some of the phrases that I want to be a part of that month.
You're walking the talk.
Exactly. And so you'll find yourself, even if you are on the fence about it, you'll find yourself like coming back to these simple exercises because your awareness is there now, and you want to grow. I mean, who doesn't want to be the best version of themselves?
Well, you have just from 3 years ago till now, we've seen such tremendous growth, and I know that you felt it. And we're all different. Like, we all grow,
totally,
but you have to want to grow, and that's the thing. And like you said, if you're curious about it, then maybe you actually don't know that you can grow.
Exactly.
But if that curiosity is there, because it's for everyone. Mastering your thoughts is for everyone. Getting in your mess is for everyone. I love that. All right. So anything else you want to share?
No, I think I'm good. Just thank you
Yeah.
for letting me be on.
It's so fun.
Thank you for being a part of my growth too. So
Yeah.
we all need people in our lives, too. So surround yourself with the right people.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too. So we're very fortunate to have a great culture here,
Yes.
for us as a team and with our wellness partners. So we talk about that a lot too, but it
Mhm.
definitely plays a role in it.
It does. And like attracts like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
and it's just going to grow. So if you guys, if this resonates with you, if Holli's growth and her conversation resonates with you and her experiences, go back and listen to the other episodes of the podcast. Holli produces these. She's like, when we're done here, she's going to go into editing with her sister, Sydney, but they listen to the podcast because we understand the value. And I listen to podcasts. I listen to my own, and then I'm like, okay, I need to tweak that. I learned from that, but I also listen to other thought leaders and wellness influencers and all of that, because it's just, we have unlimited potential, unlimited. So if this speaks to you, here's the cool thing, because we were talking about that new phase the doc is rolling out, Cellular Supercharge. Cellular Supercharge is all about the health of your cells and your brain and your function of your brain.
It's so exciting. Right? Oh man, I love it.
She kind of has this nerdy side. Like you have a little bit of a nerdy side. So when you started talking about it, like how cool was it for you?
Oh yeah. I was like, wait, what do you like when he was talking about, we do like certain tests and all this stuff. I think because when you become aware of the mindset piece of it, you're like, oh my gosh, so that plays a role, but I can actually do exercises and I can eat this way and all these things. And so it's like, man, I want to go down the rabbit hole. I want to figure this out, because who doesn't want to, live in their health optimally?
Exactly.
It's not just about people who are struggling with chronic conditions. It's also for people who want that next step in their health, to be, a better athlete, to be, just better physically in any way. And this program is so exciting because it's literally centered around just optimization. It is so cool.
And that was something that was bugging him. Like it was literally bothering him that he didn't have this piece. And, where we are in our life, like we can say without a doubt, we're optimally well. And he's optimally well. So he just felt like he was missing that piece for the people who were becoming optimally well in the program. And also, like you said, for people who come to us who are already optimally well, like maybe you're an athlete and you just want to up your game. This phase, this program is a standalone by itself, Cellular Supercharge. He has been doing it and testing it for the past months. I've told these guys, like the change in him has been incredible in so many aspects. Now we're going to actually move into doing it. This is kind of how we do things here at Wellness Method. Like we do it before our wellness partners do it, because it's defined and refined now. But this is something that anybody can do. And so we start next week, the 12th, a week and a half, 2 weeks.
It's gonna be
so exciting. So if you guys are interested in it, reach out to us. It's a standalone. It's for the optimally well. And if you are struggling with your health, like Holli said, this is part of our greater program. So we're really excited about it.
It's going to be great.
And it'll create a mess in your life that you'll get to clean up.
Exactly.
Right. And then you're going to be working on your thoughts too. So thank you so much. This was so great.
That was awesome.
All right, you guys, as always, we hope this is helpful, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.